So they say that preachers are always giving the sermons that they need to hear themselves, and that is definitely the case today. So I want to start with a little piece of art from my apartment. So this is a piece of art from Lisa Congdon. Shows a person diving headfirst into the water, so submerged that we only see their trailing legs, against either the rising or setting sun or the harvest moon. This summer, actually, the sun and moon up north were both turned this brilliant red with the wildfire smoke, and I thought of this piece. So fires blazing all around, this person thrown themselves in the deep, and the words in the corner say, "all in." This made a perfect Christmas gift for me last year because my friends and I often joke that my all-in-ness is the best and worst thing about me. Whether it's in love or in school or in friendships, in hobbies, in music. I mean, don't get me started on how much I'm obsessed with Brandy Carlisle. If we've met for like 5 minutes, I've already told you about it. But the flip side of that is that I can very quickly become all out, abandoning projects, ideas, even people when they push me too far. I am one who is prone to extremes, and examples of this are all over my life. Whether it's vegan diet, no buy year, haven't drank since I was 26 because a friend needed to quit drinking and I was like, I'll do it with you, and then just like went full in with that. Even from the library this week, I checked out 8 books about Lagom, which, as you'll see momentarily, is the peak of irony. And I didn't even realize it until I was actually writing the message, that I was like, 8 books about this is so funny. But our world right now, in so many ways, while I think our culture is as addicted to extremes as I am, we're in this really liminal space, this space in between, the space of not knowing and waiting with hope, but lots of uncertainty. A place where it is so difficult to hurl yourself all in, to race ahead or push for more. And I think that is why so many cultures have a holiday this time of year, especially around light and darkness, around patience and expectation. The Christian tradition of Advent falls perfectly into this. And in my family, the holiday season brings out our Swedish heritage. Our Christmas meal is 3 different kinds of Swedish meatballs, 2 kinds of fish cakes, lefse, etc., the whole deal. But this year I'm leaning on another Swedish cultural touchstone, which is the idea of Lagom, L-A-G-O-M. It's a concept that underlies much of Swedish culture and life, and one that I think would be absolutely transformative for us to practice. So let me tell you a little bit about it, and then about how it might be a radical spiritual value for us to live in our beloved community. Lagom is a word that many find untranslatable neatly into English, and in America, it's no surprise that we don't have an obvious equivalent. It basically means not too little, not too much, just the right amount. Or enough is as good as a feast, or the right amount is the perfect amount. One person writing about it says, if you know what is just enough, why go overboard? Lagom at its best is a manifestation of equilibrium. So let's look at some examples of how this gets lived out. And I want to preface this by saying I am speaking in rampant oversimplifications here, as one must when trying to describe a whole culture. It's kind of like a pointillism painting. Each dot is totally different, but you step back and you can kind of see the big shapes. So when I'm talking about this culturally, I'm stepping back and looking at these broader pictures. So one great cultural example of Lagom is around the morning coffee break. Everyday Swedes take a fika coffee break and have a cup of their notoriously strong stand a spoon up in it coffee. And nearly everyone will have a sweet treat like a cookie or, more commonly, a cinnamon bun. Rather than overindulge or abstain completely, the culture values enjoying just the right amount. Take time out of your day, take a real break, enjoy a real treat. And that doesn't mean you have to abandon productivity for the rest of the morning. You don't have to eat the whole pan of rolls. You just have the right amount and then get back to it. Swedes would also say that their 4 distinct seasons, like we have here, allow them to enjoy each of them a Lagom amount. Some winter, but not too much. Some summer, but not too much. Let me tell you, the time I spent living in Berkeley, California, I was so ready to be done with the warm weather by the time December came. It was so disorienting because too much of a good thing is still too much, and that makes it not a good thing anymore. This seems so radical in our culture that seems quick to label things as good and bad, to make everything black and white, or make strict rules or go to extremes. We just need to look just 1 month ahead at these New Year's resolutions that are pending, right? How un-Lagom are so many of those so often? So there are so many ways to practice this over the holidays. The Lagom amount of time with family, the Lagom amount of honesty in conversation with people you disagree with, the Lagom amount of sweets, the Lagom amount of decorations or holiday plans you make. Maybe it's just me and my circles, but the holidays can feel like such a production sometimes, so much pressure. When we hold Lagom as a guiding value, we don't get overcommitted. We don't hold ourselves to unreasonable ideas of perfection. We don't burden the planet with overconsumption. But beyond the holidays, imagine what it would be like to have the Lagom amount of police officers in Minneapolis, which I honestly believe the ballot initiative was about, or even the Lagom amount of social justice work in our own lives. Many of the activists have had to learn this the hard way. There must be a middle ground between fighting on the front lines and taking care of yourself. I think Lagom is an expression of Adrienne Maree Brown's pleasure activism. Lagom is about doing things right in an uncomplicated way. And it varies by person, it varies by season and context. And in this way, it really can become a guiding spiritual value, a compass point that we keep checking in on, keep honing our sense of. And like other spiritual values, we can practice it in small ways to grow our capacity to live it in larger ways. One way I've been practicing this is that I grew up in a house that was extremely clean, to the point where I remember telling my mom multiple times, it's okay if it looks like people actually live here. We're not doing a magazine photo shoot. And so I like my spaces to look lived in. I like a few blankets askew and the knitting project in a small heap on the coffee table and piles of library books in the corners, all of my 8 books about just enoughness and not going overboard. But what if I focused on my apartment being a Lagom amount of tidy? For me, one of the major virtues of Lagom is that it takes the pressure off of myself and others. I'm not expecting perfection from everyone or anyone, including myself. And there is a critique that Lagom is praising mediocrity or frugality, but that's such an extreme projection onto it. It's such a narrow point in time. Yes, Lagom sometimes means holding back, not eating the entire plate of Spritz cookies over the course of the weekend at the cabin. But sometimes Lagom means going for it, starting a new hobby without worrying if you're going to be great at it, spending time with someone who might not be your favorite, but one afternoon would be fine. You give and you take. You work and you rest. You jump in and you know when to stay back. So I don't know if I can go all in on Lagom, or if I need to Lagom my all-inness, but I know that it has something to teach me and could be really transformative in the world I see and the culture I seem to interact with. Chuck's going to play us a little bit of music and Kathy's going to tell us a little bit about it. But after that, I'm hoping that you'll share with us an area of your life where where you see the possibility of bringing a little bit of Lagom and might be able to practice it in the coming weeks. So Chuck, Kathy, do you have some music for us? And then we'll resume our conversation together.
I'll talk about it while Chuck is getting hooked up. Can everybody hear me? I switched my mic. Okay. So this is River Hills United Methodist Church, the Jubilate Bells. The gal who's directing this piece has been directing this group for 50 years. And I joined it because my brother and my sister-in-law were members and they needed more people. And since then, my niece has rejoined the Bell program that she was a member of as a kid. So there's 4 of us porters in the group. I'm the short one with the curly hair and the black mask. I'm standing next to my sister-in-law who's taller. My brother's playing the biggest bells, And my niece Beth is playing 4 in hand, the little teeny bells up at the top. And she's the tallest one in that group, I think. So go ahead, Chuck. Do we have sound?
We're not hearing it, honey.
Yeah, I know. I wasn't hearing it either. I don't know what's going on here.
It
Hang
looks
on.
like the YouTube video is on mute down in the corner. There's a little X next to the speaker.
Yeah, you got that on mute.
Okay, here we go.
Okay. Can you...
Pick it up. Hang on. Okay, there we go.
And we also have a soloist with it, so.
Yeah.
Christmas is coming, let the church bells ring. People celebrating the birth of a king, shouting Hosanna till the heavens ring. Christmas is coming, let the church bells ring. Christmas is coming, Mary's baby boy, bringing us a message of comfort and joy. Glory, hallelujah, what a wonderful thing. Christmas is coming, let the church bells ring. Christmas is coming, let the church bells ring. People celebrating the birth of a king, shouting Hosanna till the heavens ring. Christmas is coming, let the church bells ring. Oh, come, and ransom captive Israel that mourns in lonely exile here until the Son of God appear. Rejoice, rejoice, Emmanuel shall come to thee, O Glory fill the heavens, music fill the night. Shepherds heard the angels sing, wise men saw the light. Christmas is coming, let the church bells ring. church bells ring. Let the church bells ring.
Beautiful, Kathy. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. So I would love to hear from folks about where Lagom might be a welcome breath of fresh air or wonderfully challenging practice in your life. I first learned about Lagom about a year ago, and it's, like I said, very foreign to me, but I would say that I'm like a Lagom vegan now. Sometimes I will have cheese or butter, yum. If I can make sure it's from ethical farms I trust, or I'll try some beer that my friend made and enjoy it with them, even though technically I still think of myself as someone who doesn't drink. So yeah, it's been showing up for me in really interesting ways after I go to these extremes, like the no buy year. Like sometimes the middle is harder to find for me than the extreme, you know. Can I imagine if I got like Lagom grades? I mean, I'm so burned out by the end of the trimester that I definitely study for finals a Lagom amount, but I think that's just me justifying my apathy and being a little burned out. So yeah, it's been really fun for me to play with, but it's a moving target for sure. So I'd love to hear for you where you might, and I share all of that just as examples of like ways that it has shown up for me. And I would love to hear where some
I could give a silly one.
Go for it.
So I've always been too much of a Christmas decoration, Christmas stuff person, and I am Lagoming myself this year not to buy a single solitary more decorating item, etc., paper, whatever. And I want to give stuff away. So that's my little Lagom. We'll see how it goes.
Yeah.
Two things. Stephanie, I grew up in a house just like yours, apparently. Nothing was out of place, and my parents used to put the mail on the corner of this table, and if the doorbell rang, if somebody came to the door, my mother would rush to that pile of mail and hide it. The other thing was, she used to say about my father, and I had to write this down, if enough is good, too much is much better. And then she used to constantly tell me that I was so much like my father, which is in that case true. I think I'm glad you brought up Lagom, because I think I need to learn more about it and try and integrate it into my life a bit. So thank you for the sermon today.
I feel a little like I need to adopt it as an attitude, because I always feel like I'm not doing enough, or oh no, I missed that thing that I wish I had done, and I missed that thing. And it's like, you know, I probably am doing plenty. So I just have to maybe get that in my brain that it's good, it's enough.
Yeah, and they have done studies. I've taken a lot of courses on, you know, the science of happiness and stuff. And they do say that people who are maximizers and sort of hold themselves to that standard are actually way more unhappy than people that they call like satisficers. Like, is this satisfying? Is this enough? You know, if you have 20 different kinds of apples to choose from, you're going to be less happy with your choice than if you choose from like 2 different kinds of apples or something. And so it's like, there's enough here, and I don't have to have looked for all 20 of those apples to find the best variety. It's like, this is great, you know, and it's fine. And like, I think our culture here is that is such a compromise, or like you is like, oh, I should be doing more. Or Megan, I think that like, if some is good, more is better is a very common thought. And this is just like, yeah, I find myself on both sides of that extreme of I'm not doing enough or doing way too much. So yeah, it's a really good right sizing practice for me.
I think our society is just hounded by commercialism, and you know, you need more, more, more. And I've noticed lately, all the commercials seem to say, use the phrase, "You deserve," you know, whatever it is, you deserve, and that just gets me riled up whenever one of them says it. It's like, oh.
Yeah, the Swedes actually also have a practice called Kopstopp, which is where you do a no buy thing, but theirs is always as extreme as a year. It can be a month or 3 months, and so they'll sort of be like, I just need to check my consumption habits and like only buy, you know, new outerwear that children have grown out of, or you know, whatever the necessities are, but like really look at the necessities. And I was like, oh, that's, you know, I just thought I got it from like YouTubers or something, but I was like, oh, the Swedes have been doing this. Of course they have their own little thing for it, but it is so revolutionary. So other folks, where specifically might you be able to practice this, or would it feel good to bring some of this in?
So go ahead, Barbara.
I think this is just a really fascinating concept, and I think I would have a hard time finding that balance, because I would have anxiety about, oh, is this too much now? Oh, is this not enough? Oh, where's the balance? Okay, where's Lagom? Okay, so anyway, I'm exaggerating, of course, but so that is what occurred to me, but yeah, in a looking at it as a whole, yeah, it really something that I'm going to consider.
We can start with the Lagom amount of Lagom too.
One of the things that kept occurring to me while you were talking was I read an amazingly wonderful article about white supremacy culture that described the characteristics of it. And one of it is perfectionism and one right way of doing things, and objectivity and fear of not being enough. And I think it all kind of really aligns with what you said today, and that I want to be vigilant in my awareness when this comes up for me, and that you know, I don't want to be a perfectionist, but it is a lot of our cultural indoctrination, for lack of a better word, and the messages that we receive constantly is, you know, you have to buy this thing so that you'll be perfect, and you have to do this thing so that, you know, it's, well, how did it get to be a competition in the first place too? So I could ramble on, but those were the things that really came up for me.
I want to say another thing that I have really learned in trying to expose white supremacy culture is that individualism, which I think feeds into all of that, of separating, and then the individuals attaining perfection on their own, and then there's that sense of competition. And the word lagom actually supposedly comes from a phrase lag et om, which means once around the team. And so the idea was there was this big bucket of mead that all the Vikings would share. Now, these were not people that I would necessarily look to for moral and ethical values, the Vikings, but the idea was you take a sip out of this giant communal beverage container of the mead, and you take enough that you enjoy it, but you also leave enough for everyone else so that it can make it once around the team. And so you kind of have to know, get a sense of your needs and how you want to warm up and be celebrated, and also taking the needs of other people into consideration, realizing that there's a bigger picture. So it's not too much, it's not too little, oh, no, I won't have any, you have it, which I feel is very Scandinavian passive aggressive that I've grown up with, or like, I want it all because I'm thirsty and cold. But I love that at the roots of this word is a communal awareness once around the horn of everyone getting what they need, and without that hoarding or martyrdom sacrifice kind of stuff that I think white supremacy culture just really perpetuates with that prioritization of individualism and hyper-individualism, and then what happens from there. So yeah.
That reminds me of a quote or a meme that I saw, and I felt a little guilty about being in the former group. It says there are two types of people. One that will load up his plate with pizza in the pizza line because they might run out, and another type is the one who takes only one slice because they might run out.
And braiding sweetgrass also comes to mind when she talks about, you know, when you're foraging or harvesting things, you don't take it all, you leave some, and you don't, you know, you don't waste what you do have.
Yeah. And that's another thing I want to toss in. My other fun favorite part about this is I'm like, I can't get everything into a sermon, but I can always just sprinkle in other little nuggets during the conversation. So another nugget I want to sprinkle in is there is this like loathing of waste, whether it's food waste or consumer waste, or I mean, like the Swedish recycling rate is off the charts. They have like words for like leftover fry up dinner, where it's just like you throw everything in with some potatoes and like turn your leftovers into a thing. Like that's like a national dish practically, because like waste is so abhorrent, because it is the evidence of unlagomness, of taking more than you needed or preparing more food than you needed. And so I thought that was a really beautiful like facet of it as well.
I've gotten in trouble recently with my family members about two things I'm thinking about. One is I want to make some twig art or branch art or whatever art with branches and twigs. So I've been picking up branches and twigs everywhere I go, and my husband, I have piles in the garage, but they're organized. They're in boxes, and I think I've been very neat about it. But he has been, you know, a little embarrassed by my piles of branches. Although I did have him carry home two pretty long pieces of wood from the park near us, and and that was pretty nice of him to do that. The other thing I've gotten in trouble with is long telephone calls with my brother. This is a recent connection, like within this year, and we're on the phone sometimes for 2 hours, and I don't even realize that much time has gone by. So I have been thinking about this. Is that a problem that I'm doing that with him? I'm not sure, but anyway. I'm not going to give up on the twigs and branches for sure, but maybe I have been monopolizing my time with my brother. I'm not sure about that either.
I'm getting used to her collection of sticks, and it's I think it's a good Lagom amount, but I am working on my perfectionism. I'm one that loves to repair things, so I have to fix everything in the house. I have 3 cars, 2 snowmobiles, or 2 snow blowers, mowers, every appliance in the house. It needs my attention always. So because of my daughter and Sue, I've been really working on this. They get me every time I'm on a ladder fixing woodpecker holes in the house. So,
Yes, scaring us to death that we're going to take you to the ER because you're climbing up on roofs all by yourself. Right.
You see, even for sister-in-law,
Yeah, because he refuses to hire anyone.
but I am working on it. I think I'm improving. But one area that I'm not gonna focus anything away. There's no Lagom amount of corgis in my life.
I support that.
Well, and unfortunately, I added to Sue's passion for twigs and branches and birch bark as well. We picked up some of that too when I was there.
Yeah, it's fun.
And it's all in different seasons. Like, you know, my sister talks about like she has a toddler and nutrition, and she's like, the most helpful thing I learned about toddler nutrition is that it has to balance over the course of a week, not a day. Like today, maybe the only thing he'll eat is pears. Okay. But over the week, like, is he getting vegetables? Is he getting protein? You know? And so I think it's the same thing with Lagom, is it's like, this might be a season to gather a lot of twigs, make your art, you know? And then like, you're not going to do it every day for the next 20 years, but like, there might be a time for this, you know? And so I think that's the other beautiful thing about Lagom, is that it's this, it feels like a spiritual value because it's not fixed. It's not just like one thing that we hit. It's this like constant attunement. So I don't know.
When you were talking about an abundance of something, I forget exactly what you were talking about, but it made me think of the movie with Robin Williams when he when he wanted to defect. He was a Russian who wanted to defect here in the States. So he went shopping for coffee, and he's standing in front of the coffee display, and there must have been like 15 different, you know, coffee, but whatever, and he just fainted. And I think of that a lot of times when I feel overwhelmed by this culture. Like, I would rather go to the store and actually just pick from 3 rather than from 15 or 20, you know, because it makes you kind of crazy.
Yeah. And it doesn't make us happier. That's what those studies show. Like, having 20 options for your coffee brand doesn't actually make you happier.
Right.
Remember, my college roommate had grown up in Kenya. She was a missionary kid, and she went to Target, and she had the same thing in the deodorant aisle. She was like, I don't just cannot, what do you use? Like, I don't know how to choose from 80 different deodorants and smell. She was just sort of paralyzed by it, you know? And I was like, yeah, you know?
That's not how I am at IKEA and Hy-Vee. It's too overwhelming for me.
Right. And like, you know, so yeah, what's the Lagom amount of quality, and like finding something that is good and gonna last, you know, and not overworking it. I see that a lot with, you know, online shopping. It's easy to try to find the best this and the perfect that, and and it's like, oh yeah, that's an endless rabbit hole to go down.
I'd like to
Go ahead, Deb. Go ahead.
I was just going to say to Sue that I don't think that talking to your brother for 2 hours is on Lagom or whatever. I talk to my sister maybe once every 2 or 3 weeks, and it's always at least an hour and a half. But we don't talk every day. So it's sort of like the idea of the toddler nutrition. You talk for a long time, and then you don't talk for a little while. It's hard when people don't live close. So I absolve you of that.
Thank you.
Well, I was, the whole thing about being overwhelmed, I really identify with that, because I've had that feeling every time I go into Target. And another thing that really disturbs me is I one time looked around and says, all of this is eventually going to be in a landfill. And that really, I just, it shuts me down. Too much shuts me down. And I just, I have a list and I just stick to it. And the same thing is like in our yard, in our landscaping, we've been working in this place for so long. And then I decided a long time ago, I wanted to have more natural habitat for like birds. And so, and it's something that has to be really planned, because once you get rid of some of the natural, it's really hard to get it back. So I've been just trying to be aware outside and inside of what a balance with landscaping and I guess now with COVID, you have to have a real balance there in where you're going to go and what you're going to participate in. And the pressure is even more now with indoor gatherings for the holidays and turning down places, the balance between your health and what's socializing you can do. So you have to turn down places where you know people aren't balanced as far as COVID goes, if they're not balanced.
Mhm.
Augmenting what Kitty said, go back to Susan. If anybody is going to collect anything, it should be twigs, because if they end up in a landfill, good, they turn to dirt. You can use them to start your fires. You can put them out in the critters. I mean, it's a perfect thing. So Susan, don't you dare feel guilty for collecting twigs, because it's perfect. It's all that plastic crap that's the problem. There
Well,
you
good
go.
point. That should help Kitty. Here's some of my latest collect. This is a wonderful one. It's like super cool.
I have piles of wood that I find it's just so beautiful.
Yeah.
It's just so beautiful. And I
Yeah.
always think, well, I could make something out of it, but it's just sitting in a place in my yard being beautiful.
Yeah.
We have a
Yeah.
neighbor up north that he feeds the deer, so he's got deer around his house, and they're always chewing these branches. So he brought over a totally clean branch that was deer cleaned a couple of days ago. It was wonderful.
Thank you.
I know I'm taking a bit of a risk this holiday season and spending more time with my family than I usually would. And I can already tell it's probably on the wrong side of Lagom, but I'm going to do my best. After an impulse to just like not go and not be there and really, really pull back. And so realizing that that's a little extreme, like, okay, what's the Lagom amount of time of being there, and how do I manage that time more successfully so that it isn't just like, pressure and expectations. So that'll be a way that I can report back, let you know how it goes. Wish me luck.
One of my experiences that I never really thought of in this framework before is like being at a gathering of people with Kelly and I, and her Lagom level of how long we stay is different than mine. It's like a couple hours and I'm going, okay, I'm ready, and so I think it'll help me to know we're gonna have to find a balance between our two different Lagoms.
Mm-hmm.
A really good point, honey. I love that.
I hear so many people saying they're decorating less, because they're not having people over. So, and I've never decorated a lot because my house is too small. I have no room for a tree or anything large. So, and of course, I'm not having anyone over, maybe a occasional one person, but I did make a decision. I make my cards, which are quite involved. There's a bunch of steps, and I decided this year for my holiday cards, I'm going to simplify. I have some really pretty holiday paper that, of course, I found somewhere. And instead of making a card and doing the ribbon and everything and cutting the card and everything, I'm just going to take the holiday paper, put my letter on there, and stick in a picture. And I'll still be connecting with friends. And they already know I'm capable of making a pretty card, so I don't have to do it every year. So that's kind of it's going to be a big time saver.
Beautiful.
It's lucky. Working on the computer.
I know. My kitty is very, very good about the Lagom amount of snuggles. I just want to like, I see everybody's animals and she's very good about like, I would like attention now. And then she's like, okay, that's enough, and walks away. And I'm like,
Yeah.
rude, Disco, I want to like, hang out. And she's like, no, that's all I needed. She is a little guru of Lagom.
I always feel like Eric and Kelly, our black cats, should meet. They're both such Zoom fans.
I know whenever we figure out where and how to do in person again, I want everyone to bring their critters. They're such a fun part of our congregation now.
We should have a blessing of the animals service at some point when we can gather together.
Yeah. Kathy can start tracking their attendance.
Right.
This many people and this many corgis and this many kitties. Well, any other closing thoughts? I want to respect our time that we're coming up on the end, and that, we'll do church for a Lagom amount of time. But are there any other ways that people just sort of want to speak a commitment to a Lagom practice that they want to take up, or just sort of recognize in their own life?
I hadn't really considered this until a few moments ago, but I had started a practice about 3 weeks ago. I have tried for the last 5 or 6 years to keep track on my blog of what's been going on in our world and in society, almost as if I'm keeping it for the future. And I realized not too long ago that everything seemed to be happening so fast, I didn't have time to respond to it before something else happened. And I would go for months without commenting, which, I don't have that many readers, so it didn't bother them, but it bothered me because I felt like, I have a lot to say about that, but I didn't say any of it. So a few weeks ago, I was reading a book, biography of Francois Villon, who was a medieval poet. And I said, I haven't written poetry in a long time. And my concept of poetry has always been that it's a picture of a moment, a single frame of something that is occurring right now. And I said, well, I can do that in poetry. So I've been doing that for the last few weeks, and really enjoyed getting back into poetry again, writing about confrontations I have during demonstrations when I'm at a protest, confrontation that I might have with a counter protester, or things I see when I'm walking that tickle my sense of irony. I just like I like doing that now. That feels a whole lot more organic, I suppose, than trying to write 2 or 3 paragraphs talking about something.
Yeah. Beautiful. Thank you. Well, thanks so much for joining us today, everyone. We'll sort of transition into an informal coffee hour conversation now. So if you need to go refill your mug. Otherwise, we'll see you back here on Zoom at 1 p.m. if you'd like, for just a Lagom amount of time. It's not too long, but we're just going to practice a new little spiritual practice, test it out so that you can sort of stay nourished in these dark days. So thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
Yes. All right. I'll see you at 1.
Thanks, Steph.